So I wanted to actually call a judge since we have the opportunity to do so right now. This bleeds a little bit into our main topic, but don't worry, there's some nonsense at the end, just in case you were worried. From a player perspective, I really want to let people know, and this is something I'm sure Toby has said millions of times, don't be afraid to call a judge. I think one of the things that people don't realize is that calling a judge does not mean you think your opponent's cheating. It does not mean someone screwed up and the judge is going to come here to, well, judge you. The judge is going to come over to make sure that the game gets played correctly. And it's just not an indictment of your opponent when you call a judge. I really just wish people would call a judge whenever they get confused or aren't sure what's going on or think something might have happened. And I think it would just make the game go a lot smoother. People weren't worried about this. I know there's a lot of players who are just too intimidated to call a judge, or when their opponent calls a judge, they get mad at their opponent. And that's not improving the gameplay experience for anyone. A couple of times I had the experience where I, have some complicated card interaction. My opponent's like, how does that work? And I explain it. They're like, okay, whatever you say, man. And I'm like, well, I can call a judge and they'll tell you that it works that way. They're like, no, it's fine. I trust you. And it's like, yeah, you really think I'm just like making things up right here, but you don't want to call a judge to verify it. And that's the sort of thing I really don't want to avoid, because at the end of the day, my opponent's not sure what's going on. And they're like vaguely suspicious, but not so much that they actually want a judge to come over and talk to them. And I think they just didn't have a great experience there. But in general, I've been very happy calling a judges. So I actually wanted to go over some of the most common rulings I've appealed. Since if a judge comes over and makes a ruling, you can appeal to the head judge. Many times that's actually been Toby. I think the ruling I've appealed the most frequently is whether I can go to the bathroom. Toby's actually answered at least one of these, where I tell the judge, I'd like to use the bathroom. They're just like, no, the round's about to start. I'm like, well, I'd like to appeal. Like, appeal what? I'm like, well, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I don't want to get a game lost for being late. And every time Toby said, yes, go to the bathroom. But for whatever reason, I've been told multiple times that now is not the time, but that's just not how it works. So that's what I always recommend appealing. The other, and this is the most fun for really everyone involved, it's appealing a slow play ruling. And I have to say that every time I've seen someone get called for slow play, they've appealed and argued very vehemently about how quickly they played and how much time their opponents used and all sorts of things. And again, Toby's heard many, many times more this than I have. But I've been on both sides of this. It's pretty tricky. Is there something that you generally do when this happens, Toby?
I could do an entire podcast on slow play philosophy. There's a couple of disconnects. One part of the problem is that players often don't realize when they've tanked. Like when you're tanking or when you're thinking really hard, time moves at a different rate.
Yeah, the bear on the bicycle is just going really slowly.
Well, yeah,
around
exactly.
and around.
Yes, I mean you're thinking about something. You're working through a whole bunch of complex problems, and you don't even realize. Like if I stopped talking for a minute right now, it would get really awkward. It's a remarkably long time to not do anything. And so you don't realize when you sit there that, and a judge suddenly interrupts you and says, and usually they'll give you a warning. They'll be like, I need you to play faster, or just a reminder, nudge, 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 time to do something. That can be a big surprise to players. They won't realize, oh my goodness, I just didn't do anything for a minute while I sat here. The second thing is what we think of as an evolving game state. It's actually fine to take 30 seconds to a minute to evaluate if the board is just completely revamped. Somebody's just wrathed and everything's gone away, or warp world and everything's completely different. So there are times in the game where there's these crucial moments and everything has changed and you need to reevaluate. But the way Magic works is it's a series of states, and each state isn't generally very different from the previous one and isn't going to be all that different from the next one. So you've taken time to process this state as it's going on. As a new card is added to the board or removed from the board, that shouldn't substantially change. You don't have to reevaluate everything all over again. And this is a trap that players fall into, is they think, and then a little something happens, and then they need to think all over again. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to avoid players going back into those loops for every little thing that happens. And so that's often what will cause a slow play warning, is if you've been thinking and then you take a really minor, I mean, the number of times I've seen somebody think for a while, tap 2 lands, untap 2 lands, and then think a while longer, and then play something, and then think a while longer. these things haven't actually changed the game. Just take the time to think through your plan. We'll give you a few seconds to do that. We're not dashing in there. But when you're done with that, do your actions. Don't spend a whole bunch of time reevaluating the new board, because the new board looks an awful lot like the old board most of the time.
And Toby, true or false? If I play really fast during a match, I get a lot of time at the end to think.
False.
See, that's unfair, but
well, sure, but we can't track that.
I know you can't realistically track it. There aren't chess clocks, and please let them never be chess clocks.
No, never. Not on my watch.
I'm just saying that's a common defense. I don't actually think that people should get that, but that is something I've heard a lot. And I just want to close out with talking about my favorite slow play call, and that was at Grand Prix Atlantic City. Matt Sperling was playing Tom Martell. They're both attorneys, just to set the stage here. The judge.
Neither of them ever argues.
Yes, that's definitely true. The judge gave.
This is the best call.
Gave Tom a slow play warning, and Tom immediately was like, "It's not my turn. I don't have priority." And then Matt appealed it. and so the head judge came over, and it was Lems, I think, Jason Lemehu. He comes over after like. He's just watching these two attorneys just like yelling at him for like a minute and a half, and he's just like, just gonna give you both cautions and we'll just continue. It was absurd.
One of my all-time favorite judge calls is, we did have a very similar situation, and it was actually a Japanese judge, and he had some confidence issues, but he was a good guy. And he came out to the table and he watched for a while, and he gave a player a slow play warning, and the player looks up to him and says, "It's not my turn." He looks at him. He walks around the table to the other side and gives the other guy a slow play warning. It was all just very nice. He just walk. Sir, I'm going to give you a slow play warning. So he handled it absolutely correctly, honestly, because somebody had clearly taken.
Someone should get a slow play warning.
Yeah, somebody's getting one. If it wasn't the first guy, it was the other. Yeah, that's great.
So. I guess on that note, we'll close out with a minute of silence here to see exactly how long that is when you're trying to make a play.